pushes too hard on price and the whole order fails, I want to share a real story today. Not to scare you, not to blame anyone, but because this situation happens again and again in China sourcing, especially for first-time buyers. And if you understand the pattern early, you can avoid a painful and expensive lesson. This is the story of a buyer who pushed too hard on price, and how that decision quietly broke the entire order before production even started. For privacy, I'll keep the product and company names anonymous. But the timeline, behavior, and outcomes are very real. Let's begin. A buyer reached out with a clear product idea. They had strong market demand and a realistic first-order quantity. They were not a huge brand, but they were serious. At first, everything looked good. We shortlisted several capable factories. Their samples were decent, their lead times were reasonable. Then came the price negotiation. The buyer had a target price in mind. And to be fair, every buyer should have a target price. There's nothing wrong with asking for a better deal. The problem starts when the price becomes the only priority. The buyer's first message was something like, "I need this price. If you can't do it, I will find another factory." This kind of message always changes the mood of a project. Because good factories don't just compete on price. They compete on stability, process control, and quality. So what happened? Factory A gave a realistic quote. Factory B was slightly cheaper. Factory C was the lowest. The buyer immediately focused on Factory C. The quote was surprisingly low. In our experience, when a quote is much lower than the market level, one of three things is usually true. 1. The factory misunderstood the specifications. 2. They are cutting corners on materials or process. Or 3. They are using a low quote to win the order and plan to renegotiate later. We explained these risks. But the buyer was confident. They believed negotiation skill alone could solve everything. So they pushed harder. They asked for another price drop, then another. Then they asked for upgraded packaging without increasing the cost. They also asked for faster lead time at the same price. At this stage, the project was no longer a normal business discussion. It became a pressure test. The factory didn't say no, they said yes. That should have been the first warning sign, because responsible factories usually push back when demands become unrealistic. But this factory kept saying yes. The buyer felt like they had won. They were proud of the negotiation. And honestly, that feeling is understandable. When you're spending serious money, it's natural to want to feel in control. But in manufacturing, the real truth is simple. If the price doesn't cover the cost of doing the job correctly, the factory must protect its margin in another way. There are only a few places they can do that. Cheaper materials, fewer quality checks, less skilled labor, rushed production, or weaker packaging. Those decisions are not always visible on a quote sheet. They appear later, inside the order. The buyer approved the sample, but here's the second warning sign. The factory pushed to confirm production quickly, without finalizing the full written spec. They also avoided detailed discussion about materials. When we asked for a clear material statement and a final confirmation email, the replies were vague. "We will follow sample." "No problem." "Same as discussed." That kind of language is risky. Because follow sample is not a system, it's a promise without structure. Now the buyer was focusing on one thing, the deposit. They wanted to delay payment to reduce risk. They asked for special payment terms. The factory agreed again. At this point, the factory said yes to everything. Lower price, faster schedule, better packaging, flexible payment. It looked like a dream. But in real sourcing, when everything looks too perfect, it usually isn't. Production started. About 2 weeks in, the factory came back with a message. "Johnson, material cost increased. We need to adjust the price." The buyer was furious. They rejected the change. They pointed to the earlier quote. They said, "This is your problem. You confirm the price." The factory replied, "If we continue at the old price, we cannot guarantee quality." This is the moment where many orders quietly die. Because the relationship is already damaged, the buyer doesn't trust the factory doesn't respect the buyer's demands. Even if production continues, both sides are now protecting themselves. The buyer tried to hold the factory to the original terms. The factory tried to protect its margin. This conflict doesn't always look dramatic on the surface. But behind the scenes, it changes everything. The factory started sourcing alternative materials. They reduced some internal QC steps. They rushed certain processes. And the production team felt the pressure. When the goods were finally ready for inspection, the problems were obvious. The finish was inconsistent, the color variation was wider than acceptable, and the packaging was weaker than the sample standard. The buyer was shocked. They said, "But the sample was good." Yes, because the sample is a small controlled activity. Mass production is a system, and systems break when cost pressure becomes unrealistic. We propose solutions: rework part of the order, replace some components, improve packaging before shipment. But each solution needed extra time and extra money. The buyer refused. They felt they had already paid too much, so they tried the most dangerous option: ship as is and handle the problems after arrival. That rarely ends well. Once the goods arrived in the destination country, the customer complaints started. Returns increased. Negative reviews appeared. The buyer's brand reputation took damage. They ended up losing more money than the original price difference they fought so hard to save. And that is the real tragedy here. Because this failure was not caused by one single mistake. It was a chain reaction. A low initial price created pressure. Pressure reduced clarity. Lack of clarity increased risk. And risk turned into real quality issues. So what can we learn from this? Here are 5 practical lessons you can apply immediately. Lesson number 1. Don't treat price as your only strategy. A good sourcing strategy balances 3 things: cost, quality, and delivery reliability. If you push one of these too hard, the other 2 will always suffer. Lesson number 2. Compare quotes with the market range, not with your hope. If one factory is dramatically cheaper than the others, ask why. Request a material breakdown. Ask about process steps. Ask for proof of similar export orders. Cheap is not automatically bad, but unexplained cheap is risky. Lesson number 3. Lock the scope before you lock the price. Many buyers negotiate price first and details later. That's backwards. Because when specs change after pricing, conflict is almost guaranteed. Your final price should be based on a final and confirmed spec. Lesson number 4. Require a written recap before production. A short confirmation email can save your entire order. It should include product specs, materials, color or finish reference, packaging, quantity, price terms, lead time, and the inspection standard. Lesson number 5. Use small test orders to prove a factory, not just a sample. A sample can be carefully made by one skilled worker. A test order reveals the real factory system. If you're unsure, start smaller and grow. Now, I want to be clear. Negotiation is not the enemy. Smart negotiation is healthy. But there's a difference between negotiating for value and forcing a price that breaks the project. In China sourcing, the best long-term buyers don't win by squeezing every dollar. They win by building a stable supply chain that protects their brand and cash flow. And the best factories also want stable clients, not one-time price fighters. So the next time you negotiate with a Chinese supplier, ask yourself, am I pushing for a fair improvement, or am I pushing the factory into a corner? Because when a factory has no room, they will find room somewhere else. And that somewhere else is usually your quality. If you want help avoiding these situations, a local team in China can make a big difference. At Yan Sourcing, we help overseas buyers find reliable factories, evaluate real cost structures, set clear specifications, and manage quality inspections before shipment, so your order doesn't fall apart under hidden pressure. If you're planning your next order and want a safer, more predictable sourcing process, you can reach out to us through the link in the description. Thanks for watching. And if you want more real-world stories like this, with practical lessons you can apply immediately, let us know in the comments.